Hey guys, welcome back to a TouchDesigner tutorial workshop video. Today we're going to be doing a ASCII effect or ASCII filter with a bit of a 3D displacement as well. You can see here we have a live video feed feeding into this. The first part of this video will be creating the very simple ASCII effect. If I remove the blur like this. And then you can feed in any video source or image you want into it. And then we'll be using a similar process that we've used on a video before to sort of add a bit of a Z index displacement, which is to extrude this element like so. And you can see here when we play with the camera, we actually have a bit of a 3D physical displacement going on, which could be really fun to play around with. As always, this video file, so this project file, is available to download on my Patreon, just a few bucks, and you can access the file as it is right now. And all you need to do is plug in your video feed right here, and you will be good to go. Otherwise, today we're just going to attempt to go through this tutorial. It's a little bit involved with a few different techniques, and I do want to keep this for beginners, so it may be a little bit on the longer side. And I'm going to be referring back to everything just so we understand the techniques that is going on. But essentially, I just want to shout out someone in the community who suggested doing the ASCII tutorial. Reference specifically for him, he wanted me to cover this video. If you've seen this video and wanted to create this effect, or if you like the look of this specific effect as it is right now, I can still look into creating it. This tutorial is really good. I highly recommend you go and watch it. It misses one key component though, which is this element here. They don't explain what this is or how to get it. Essentially, if you just type out a string of text, it can literally be a text node and then make it 1 pixel high and by however many long. That will be the missing key you need to complete this tutorial. They wanted me to redo this whole tutorial. I thought there was just that one missing component. But let me know if there's a demand for it. So be it, and I will do it. But otherwise, I'm going to show you this technique, which is a bit of a half of my own developed technique. But again, also very inspired by many other great TouchDesigner creators out there. So essentially, what we're going to be doing is to go over this project file before we dive into the tutorial. Is we have a video feed going in like so. We then are doing a bit of shading by building out this custom little scrolling through ASCII format, which we can define with our own text here, which scrolls through it like so. And this maps it out like this. We'll work on building clarity in this image if that a little bit later. Then we basically throw that onto a grid like we've done with our 3D image to point cloud video. And it's pretty much the same technique as that, except this time we're adding in a sort of ASCII shader. But let's dive into that. So the first thing we want to do is we want to focus on this little component here. So I'm going to copy and paste this down. Before we do that, I want to define a constant. Now this constant is going to be the resolution of the grid. So we want to do here is you might want to call it like resX and then plus and then resY for the resolution X and Y. I've used the values 96 and 54. Quite a low resolution, obviously, because we want to still be able to see the individual pixels quite clearly. If you scale them down too much, you sort of will lose the whole ASCII effect anyway. So it's a very, very low pixel count. But striking that balance is something you can attempt to do here with this if you do like. Awesome. So the first thing we want to do is get a movie file in or a video file in. I'm going to work with a movie file in, and I'm going to change this to... that is not the default. I'm going to keep the banana then. You can also instead do a video file in. There is no reason why you can't do that. Or you can use your Connect camera if so. This will work with any camera, like not necessarily building this for Connect today. And then we want to connect in a threshold the reason why we're doing a threshold is just to make sure we don't get, this is mostly for very highly detailed images like a webcam, not a super necessary step for something like this banana, but regardless, I'm gonna set a very high threshold like so, capture a lot of the detail. Whenever I'm playing around with values, I know a lot of tutorials like to pick specific values and tell you to place those in. My approach is to instead sort of explain the process of what I'm doing and why I'm picking these sliders, and then leave it up to you to sort of, play with it and pick your own fine tunings. If you want to copy my values, please do. You can pause the video and do such. We want to combine this into a fit next. The reason we're doing a fit is to make sure whatever video source we plug in is going to match this resolution. So we need to go to the common tab of the fit and drag the resX onto this one, the resolution for the x-axis, and then the same for the y, and click reference. And now we have a very pixelated banana. Awesome. I believe that is everything for image adjustments. We can also want to make this mono. The reason why we're doing a monochrome here is to ensure that we have a black and white image, obviously, but if we weren't using our threshold, so I can actually, for this banana case, I can disable this threshold and just use a mono instead. Cool. So the next thing we want to do is basically create this filter and then apply it using the GLSL node, and then add some noise and then level adjustments, which just gets a clearer picture. So the way we do this little ASCII thing is we actually just have a single bit of text. So you can get a text operator like so. I'm going to copy and paste this one and just disable this for now. Your text will say derivative. I cannot spell that word, but I'm just going to write text. And then here is where you might want to just copy my parameters. If so, you can use really any fonts you want. Essentially, we will just, if I pause the video here, we will basically just trying to get a singular pixel that sort of takes up this amount of size and shape. What font you use or whatever it is that you want to use doesn't really matter, as long as you have the output at 256, which is the default one, and it roughly takes up about this size. It should work. So I encourage you to explore different font options, and then also again, make sure we copy some of the other settings. Like bold is obviously optional, it helps fill out the setting. You drag the font scale up like so, and I believe here in the color section, you also want to turn the background alpha all the way up, so we just have a black background. Awesome. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is define our own ASCII. So I've used very special characters here from another tutorial. And the way this piece of code works is the frames, so each frame, so this will be matched to your FPS counter in your project file, which you can set down here. It will scroll through 6 values here, so each value and then per frame and then repeat. So we can essentially define these like so, like age, if, and it's giving me an error right now because we don't have enough string index out of range, because we don't have enough. I believe we need to add, maybe, will that work? There we go. And now when I press play, you can see it's scrolling through my own defined characters. You can do more than 6. You can do as many as you want. You just need to make sure this matches. So again, you do single brackets, type out each of the letters you want in your ASCII code. Feel free to copy my one here if you want the exact look. Then space, square bracket, abs time dot frame for each frame, and then percent, so space, percent, and then the number of values that you want to cycle through. If we change this to 2, it's just going to flick it back and forth between the first one. If I change this to 1, it's just going to show you the first one. But obviously if we go over the allocated amount, it's going to give us an error because this index is out of range. Cool. I hope that makes sense. The next thing we need to do is turn this into a 3D texture, and because this is cycling over time, it's going to sort of map it out like so. So it's very easy. We can connect in a texture 3D. We want to make sure we change the type to a 2D texture array, because that's how we're going to be using it. And I believe that's honestly it for the texturing. Just double checking all my parameters are correct. Cool. All right. So now we have our texture. We want to apply this to the GLSL encoding, as well as a constant, but we will get to that in the future. So we can connect in the mono to a GLSL. I haven't explored much shader work in TouchDesigner or even in code before, but if you have explored that before, then this will be pretty easy for you. And then in the second input, we want to plug in our little texture array. Basically from there, we want to copy all the parameters that I have set in here. So I'm just going to go through each of these. We need to define our pixel size like so. Do I have a parameter called pixel size? I don't. You know what? I'm just going to type this out alongside. I was trying to do this in a way to like not take too long of a tutorial, but I think I might just have to embrace this is going to be a longer tutorial. So I'm just double checking all the parameters matching up and explaining anything else we come across. Any of the differences in names of nodes is purely because I'm doing this for a second or third time in the singular project file. But we'll obviously delete these duplicate ones when I post the file online. Arrays we can leave as is. Matrices I believe we can also leave as is. Atomic counters should be nothing. Constants, common, and then the common we also want to change these both to nearest pixel. And I'm gonna also put that on the bottom like so it's a little bit less confusing. And I think I am missing something. Oh, do we actually need the piece of code? We do need to actually add in some code here. This will be fun. What I'm going to do is basically the way this operator works is you code out the shaders in a way that maps the pixels to one another. So this piece of code is from another tutorial. I'm not trying to get into any sort of programming for anyone that hasn't done this before. I'll probably do a programming in TouchDesigner, or at least introduction to that tutorial at some point. Just on the basis that you are not familiar with programming, I'm going to copy these pieces of code, and then you want to click these drop down arrows to access the pixel and then the compute, and I will label each as such. You can click edit up here and then copy and paste the code in here, and then simply close this window, and then it should compile. I'm not gonna like go obviously super in depth about the code. You just need to realize that here, like you can see the different variables are being set. You're then multiplying current pixels with the like input of the image versus the like texture array. It's doing like positional lookup and then outputting a texture array with all the calculated like arrangements. I hope you don't get too concerned about this. It's a bit of a like GLSL wizardry. Shading is a very, very hard thing to get your head around. Even I'm obviously not super across all of it. But I will put this in the description. Otherwise, feel free to download the project file. Cool. So once you've put this in, sorry for yapping a bit much. We want to combine in a noise with the mono signal of the banana. I'm just going to copy this down here and replace these inputs. So let's get rid of that one and then plug that one in like so. Cool. And now we can, from here, we want to get a noise. Just want to make sure we're still bypassing that. And then plug this one, this one into the first input, and then this one into the second input like so. The first input is background image. The second one is basically mapping it, the noise coordinate map. So we're going to be mapping the noise onto whatever this input is, and you can sort of see how that's happening here. In terms of the parameters of the noise, I simply set mine by dragging around the sliders and playing around. Here they are if you want to copy them, but that's the same for the noise and the level that I'm about to show you. Actually, is I basically got all of these values just by playing around with it until I got to the sort of level that I like. This might not be something you want to even touch until later in the tutorial when we come back and adjust some of the parameters. But if you want to copy it, there they are. Everything else is the same. And then the level, I've added that in as well. Again, just brought the black level up a lot, so there's that like harsh contrast, brought the gamma down, brought the contrast up, and everything else is left the same. Cool. All right, let's connect this to a null just to signify the end of this little block of chain. I've already hit 15 minutes, so I'm gonna maybe try to speed this up without getting too complicated. So let's just try finishing off the ASCII filter here before we dive into the Z offset. So we're going to be doing a bit of instancing. So the first thing we want to do is get a grid from the SOP tab, like so. I'm going to bring this over here. We then want to make sure the rows and columns match our constant by dragging and dropping it like so, clicking reference. Awesome. Good practice to connect this to a null. And it's also good practice to rename and organize your files, but I don't do that because I am not great. Then we also want to do our instancing. So we want to get I think I'm using a grid as well. Yeah, I am. So we want to get another grid. Then I've set the size to be really small. This is going to be the individual pixels, basically. If I pull this up here, you can sort of see, like, imagine a little box wrapping around that. That's what we're defining right now. So the size will need to be quite small, and then obviously 2 by 2 for the square shape. Connect this into a null. Again, good practice. Cool. Let's hide my backgrounds. Let's then connect this to a geometry. Nice. Let's then also grab a camera, because we're going to need a camera, and then a render. Just to get all of our rendering components. I'm going to manually drag the stuff in and define it because I have a lot of other stuff going on. And right now you should just see a singular pixel. Let's do the texturing first. So we're going to need a constant under the materials tab. And I think I pretty much have everything set to normal. Yes, I do. So it's basically a white texture. Sorry, my brain is not brainy today. I have not taken my medication. And we want to apply the letters to it. So the singular like changing through letter that we've defined with our texture map here. I hope this is starting to make sense, how we're going to have a grid of a bunch of these pixels and we're going to apply this texture to it and be like, hey, cycle through these letters, and then we're going to map out the image across that grid, and then have the point of differences, which we've defined with this shading complex here, sort of be highlighted by different letters, creating differences. It's also worth noting that you might want to change your letters around for more of a like stark contrast. Different shapes, like very similar shapes, it's going to be very hard to see your image, but anyway, pressing on. Basically, you want to go and grab this texture 3D and drop it on your constant, which will assign it as the texture color map like so, and then drag that onto our geometry and click material. And then boom, you can see here we have our pixel cycling through, which is awesome, and it should be also rendering out. Good chance for you to set some rendering parameters. I'm going to make this 1920 by 1080. I think I'm going to leave everything else as is though. Yeah, let's leave it all for now. In terms of post-processing effects, I have added a RGB key, which will just give us our black background. A million different ways to do it. I'm doing it this way, and then a null. So I can set this as my background like that, and you can see the singular pixel. So now we just need to map it all out with instancing. Let's do that. So we basically want to combine this and this, 2D grid with our 2D image. And the way we're going to do that is by converting each of these to SOPs. So we can right click on the null here and go, to chops and go top 2. We then want to make sure we are grabbing just our red layer, because we only want the point of differences, so we can get rid of the red, green, blue like that, and you should just have your red. And then I think we also want to set the crop from row to full image, and I think that is everything. Yeah, cool. So we now have the full image here. And we just need to essentially turn this back into a singular value. I'm going to copy and paste this very quickly down here to help speed up the process, and then also realign my file. So first we want to connect it into a shuffle. Shuffle. Then we want to set the method to sequence channels by name, which will put it back into this singular value like so, but then also have it mapped out in a way where we can extrapolate the different values. We're then going to throw this into a rename, and I've named it texture index here. Doesn't really matter. You don't really have to do this step if you don't want, but we're going to do it. I then have a math, multiplied this value by 32 just to make sure it's at the right scale, and then a second math, and I believe all I've done here is change the integer to ceiling, which is going to essentially clamp it, if that makes sense. And then a null, just because, again, it's good to end these blocks off with nulls. You can name them, you can sort of just have them as points that you know you can add stuff in between. It's just good practice. Lots of reasons. Now we want to do the same for this, where we just want to convert this to a, so right click and then go chop and then stop to, like that. I'm then doing a select. Now, if you remember the point cloud tutorial, basically in the select here, we're going to get rid of the Z channel. So I'm going to go channel names and we're at TX, TY, so we're just grabbing those two. But since we're going to come back to the Z index, I'm going to click this button here to bypass it. And I've got a little instruction there labeling that for later on. We then want to get a merge. Plug these both in, like so. Here we have our TX, TY, TZ, and our texture index. And then connect this to a null, as you should always do. Whoa, that's a noise, not null. That would be a hectic little change. 1 second. Cool. Yep. You can see how we have a little bit more extra going on. This is all the Z off index off-putting, but we don't worry about that for now. We want to do our instancing. So if you haven't done instancing before, quick overview. We're going to use this data to be like, hey, I want you to do a pixel for each of this bits of data I'm passing in to make it really simple. So we go to our instancing tab, click on, drag and drop that onto our translate OP. We have our TX, TY, TZ channels like so to create our little grids. So you can just type in TX, TY, and TZ like so. We have our little grid here, which is awesome. Just want to go back. Sorry, I actually want to drag this into our default instance op rather than our translate op, because we're going to be using it across multiple, not just the translation today. And then we want our texturing, which is on the Instance 2 tab. And the Instance 2 tab, we want to make sure we have the texture index thrown on to the, oh my god, sorry, I keep losing it, the W of the texture coordinate. And then we also want this to be, so I'll just do that first. So we want to click the W and go texture index, and then this color pre-multiply option, set this to already pre-multiplied by alpha. And I'm just going to quickly make sure I haven't done anything else incorrectly. I am definitely forgetting something here. Apologies. I pump out these tutorials pretty quickly and don't always remember all the specific little fixes that I did to get everything working. This could be also a situation where I have so many other things going on in this project file that it's all interfering with each other. I believe we also will need to set the camera, which is something we can just do here, where we can manually zoom in by clicking that plus if you want to fill the screen. I'm just going to double check the grid is the same. I'm going to quickly stop the recording and then come back. Hola, I am back. Such a simple thing. I was like, what have I done wrong? We need to go back to our grid here where we're defining it for the pixel mapping. I left the size of the whole grid to be just 1 by 1, which is obviously not right. I was like, I swear I did it correctly. I swear I did my own process correctly. You can see here we have the grid set to 4.8, 2.3. I've just scrolled in and chosen those values by doing something a little like this. But I'm just going to copy that to make sure it was all the same. And then 2.3, because we sort of want that 16 by 9 ratio. And there. We should have something looking a little bit more like that. And I'm just going to zoom right back out with the camera. Like so. And then set the null, because we don't want to show those gaps in between. Set your camera wherever you would like, and then I'm just gonna double check. Basically, actually, we want to really maybe just play with the texture sizing again, or like sort of just play around with the spacing of everything until we get a size that we like. See how when we make the font too small or the font too big, it sort of takes up way too much of a space. I'm just gonna once again pause and double check what it is that I'm missing. You'd really think I would have this down, but alas I don't. I made a mistake earlier, apologies. I dragged you might not have actually had this mistake. I dragged the wrong value onto the rows and columns. So the 96 should instead be on the columns, and the Y should be on the rows, like so. And now you can see we have our banana. Let me hide the other one. Yes, we have our banana. And now you can also play with the sizing of everything. Like I said, make the pixels smaller if you want to make the grid size bigger, like the individual grids, or make those smaller also. You can do so like that. You can increase the density by playing around with the resolution of the image, but we're not going to get into all that today. I'm just going to reset it back to what it was. I really appreciate you bearing with me if you're still at this point in the tutorial. I will get better. I promise. This is a learning process for me. But this is essentially the final step of the ASCII. To explain the differences between what we have now and what we're going to quickly add on, we add a little bit of blur based off of the Z index. Obviously, that's a completely optional step. Just helps give us some more depth of field. Secondly, we're going to create basically a bit of noise and then replace that into the Z position of this offset, and that way it's going to sort of extrude out. You can see right now that when we click on our camera and flip it around, we just have this flat little 2D plane. That being said, if this is what you are here for, a little ASCII tutorial, then I hope this wasn't too painful to get through, and I really appreciate you watching this far. Otherwise, we're going to quickly add on the next step. We've done this in my tutorials before, so it should be a good refresher if you are following along, but otherwise if you're new, do not stress. So from our fit, we want to get, I'm just going to quickly copy all of this down and then hide my background. Cool. Okay, this is a messy project file, apologies. Let's quickly move everything down a bit more. So from our fit, which is here, we want to plug it into a noise, both of them. We want both of our background image and then our map. Feel free to copy my settings. I have done randomly selected ones. Important that on the Z axis here, you type in ABS time.seconds and then you can slow this down if you want. I've slowed it right down, the transformation. That's essentially just going to be giving us a bit of noise that's moving and changing across the Z axes. So it's like not just a static difference of position. Then we've connected it to a null. Then done the same top 2 transformation that we did before. Again, we want to select the RGB and then make sure we have this set to full image. Done a little shuffle, again, sequence by names, exact same process that we've just done earlier. Next, we want to grab the red and then rename it to TZ. You could just grab the red at the start here. I don't know why I've done it this way, but I have with a select. Multiply this, change it from 0 to 1 to 0 to 0.3. This is basically just making the scale offset a lot less. If it was left at 0 to 1, it's just going to be a very large point of difference between where the rest of the image is and where the offset is. So we're just scaling that down a little bit is essentially what we're doing here. Then connect it to a null. Awesome. Then we want to plug this null straight back into, actually, after this, so we've done our grid to SOP here, and then we have this disabled select. We want to add in another merge, like so. Then we can undisable the select, and that will just give us our TX and TY, and then we can plug our TZ into that merge, which will give us our TX, TY, Y is completely flat, and then TZ with a bit of weird offsetting going in. That should then pretty much all completely work, and as we click play, it's maybe hard to see, but if I rotate the camera, you can see we have our Z position being completely offset, which is really cool. I think that's very cool. Now, there's a million different things you can sort of do with it from this point forward. Obviously, positioning the camera on a side-on angle will help you give a lot of that depth. You can play around with feedback. This is essentially it. I'll quickly show you the depth of field blur effect, which is one way to keep this image sort of flat and help emphasize the depth. But really, it's kind of just up to you. So the way we do that is we want to grab a depth top. This depth top can only be we have to plug our render into it. It only takes renders for a depth texture. It's a little bit annoying like that, but it makes sense as this is compiling the rendering information and therefore has the depth information of the actual geometry. We then want to connect this to a threshold. This is because as a output, it's just pretty much a unusable image, so we need to convert this to a black and white scale, and we then want to really get in here and fine tune the scale by dragging this down and down. Oh, there we go. And you see it's a very, very, very fine difference. You will need to play around with this. You might want to even do a bit of softening, like a tiny, tiny amount of it, like that. it's really up to you. Do this at your own will. And then connect in a Luma blur, which takes 2 inputs, one image and then one the blur source. And we plug in the blur source, and then we basically tell this filter, hey, I want you to blur all the white parts of the image or all the black parts. And in this case, we want to keep the black unblurred, so keep that down. And then white, we could drag it a little bit up. And you can see exactly what is happening here. And maybe that's too heavy of an effect. Maybe you want to set this to like mirror and then bring it down a little bit. And now you can see we easily get a much more clear sort of depth of field. And it's sort of just, again, if you've used this banana, you can copy these numbers if you want. You've probably done your own input, and so you probably just want to play around with the threshold to your liking. But I think that's the whole video. Yeah. Cool. I would recommend playing around with some maybe feedback effects. You could play around with removing the background from this pixel like so, and that will then mean the render is a transparent image, which then will allow us to add in, say for example, I could go into image filters and then go feedback, plug that bad boy in, plug it in like that. Be creative, do what you want. But yeah, that's pretty much the tutorial. Sorry, today's one was all over the place. I have no idea how many of you make it through these tutorials, but I appreciate all the kind words everyone's been sharing recently. This tutorial came about because someone suggested it, they wanted it. So if you see any TouchDesigner effects online that you want me to give a tutorial on for free, let me know. Again, these tutorials, as we get more and more complicated, will get longer and longer. I will do my best to shorten that down, but the project files are available every time I post on Patreon. You just have to subscribe and you get access to everything. Really appreciate everyone that supports over there. Otherwise, I think that's it for today's video. Hope you've enjoyed, and I'll catch you on the next one. See ya.